There's an expression that says, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And we know that. Advertisers know that. Once, advertising got to be big stuff, there are fewer and fewer words and information in an ad, but there's a lot of pictures or movement and stuff, because, that says so much to us and kind of gets through the filter of our brain and gets down into our emotions and stuff and brings forth feelings of, gosh, I got to go buy that car because I'll feel really good if I do that. And advertisers know that, and that's why they feed you that stuff. But it's true, a picture is worth 1,000 words or more. Jesus is the picture of the Word. He's so much a picture of the Word of God that he is called by John the Word of God. You want to know God's nature? Look at Jesus. You want to know what God is like? Look at Jesus. You want to know more about God? Study Jesus. He is God. But God in a picture that we can see. The Word of God. The Word of God. And the Word of God is full of law in the sense of covenant. Hey, I will, you will. Here's what our agreement together will be. It's full of just words, communication from God. It's full of judgments, laws. Hey, you know what? This is right. This is wrong. The Word of God is full of testimonies. And I love that. It's not just a testimony, but loads and loads of testimonies. For one thing, it makes it really interesting. It makes reading the Bible interesting, because you come up with all these interesting characters and you go, wow, God really uses interesting people. God really uses some stoneheads. God really uses some amazingly competent and amazingly talented people. And he uses some people that, they would be the last one picked for a game. Okay, I'll take him if you'll take them, okay? Then we'll be equally hindered in winning the game. You know what I mean? You either picked that way or you were one of the pickees that way. So we all know what I'm talking about there. And you look through it and you go, wow. And it speaks again what the Word speaks in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Not God so loved Israel that he gave his only begotten Son. God so loved men. God so loved women. God so loved Italians. God so loved this, that. Pick whatever it is. No, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life. It's full of commandments. There's some commandments in the Scripture. And I'm so glad that in the progressive revelation of God, we, as saved Gentiles, are not subject to the commandments of the kosher law. I like pulled pork sandwiches. I like many things that are not kosher. God has delivered us from that, but there are still commandments in the Word of God. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all of your might. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That came straight from the mouth of the picture of God, Jesus Christ. Wow. And he didn't say, you ought to. He said, you shall. I know the difference when I was young, when my father would say, Kevin, what you really ought to do. Or, Kevin, you shall do this. Okay, Dad, I understand. Commandments, decrees, precepts, just knowledge about life, about, this is, if you do this, this happens. Okay, so if this is happening, I got to start looking for this. Is this going on? Or promises. Words have a different impact depending on the source, don't they? And I just kind of alluded to that. When I was young, Mom was the one who was the kids' friends. You know, when Mom said, "Now, Kevin," it was like, oh, yeah, that's Mom. I love this. Because she cares, but I could still get away with it. But when my dad would say, Kevin, that was a different story. Depending upon the source, it meant something different. This morning what we're talking about is the Word of God. That's the source. God Almighty. That's the source. Oh, consider the source when you consider the Word of God. Now, we're not going to read through all 176 verses this morning. There's, because of the structure of the poem, there's obviously some repetition of ideas and so forth, because what we lose in the English, a Hebrew person would really appreciate is the way of saying the same thing and fitting it into this lovely structure of poetry. But I do want to pick out a couple of things this morning that we can glean from this, and I certainly would not suggest that you shouldn't read the whole thing. Of course not. Of course not. You know, here at Calvary Chapel, this is what's important to us, is the Word of God. And I just kind of gave you a little taste of why I think that the Word of God is important. But let's take a look at the first verse, or first stanza, that all begins with the letter Aleph. Blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the law of the Lord. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with the whole heart. They also do no iniquity. They walk in his ways. You have commanded us to keep your precepts diligently. Oh, that my ways were directed to keep your statutes. Then I would not be ashamed when I look into all your commandments. I will praise you with uprightness of heart when I learn your righteous judgments. I will keep your statutes. Oh, do not forsake me utterly. Blessed. Blessed is an interesting Hebrew word because we think of it in religious terms. Oh, that's blessed. Oh, I was blessed by this. Oh, that thing is really blessed. Oh, this time was really blessed. And we think of it in terms of some pixie dust that God sprinkles on. So, oh, now you're blessed. But blessed is, in the Hebrew concept, was an internal and just totally complete and overwhelming feeling of power and knowledge and security and joy and rejoicing. Whoa, blessed. I am blessed, man. That's like the ultimate. It's not something you would say, oh, I felt so blessed by that. No, it's like, man, I was blessed by that. All right. That's being blessed. And that's what the psalmist is saying is, man, blessed is that guy who walks how? Undefiled in the way. Undefiled. Complete. Without spot, whole, with integrity. That's what that word undefiled means. Oh, the person who can walk in integrity, completely in the way, completely walking in the law of the Lord. Yeah. And when I first start reading verses like that, I hear it. If I could hear the audio version, I would imagine that the person is way up above me and saying, oh, blessed is the man who can do this like I do. But that's not here. Listen to what the psalmist says in verse 5. Oh, that my ways were directed to keep your statutes. Blessed, I can see that people who could walk in that way diligently and purposely and wholly and completely, man, they are so blessed. Man, I wish I could do that. That's what he's saying here. Oh, that my ways were directed to keep your statutes. That word directed means to be set up, to be established or erected, as if erecting a statue or erecting a building. Oh, that it might be settled that way. Oh, that it might be prepared. Oh, that my life were such that, man, you know what? I'm prepared. I'm set up to follow the law of the Lord. That's what has been built into me as a foundation, is to follow the Lord. Oh, that my ways were directed to follow your statutes. You know, this verse, this stanza reminds me a little bit of Romans chapter 7. Paul talks in Romans chapter 7, and he says that the law is good. But the law has actually led me to a place where I realize I can't keep the law. And worse, my own something inside of me takes a look at that law and says, that's the right thing to do. Let's go do the wrong thing to do. And then I find myself in my mind agreeing with the law. That's the right thing to do. That's what I ought to be doing. But instead there's this fight that's going on inside of me. And I find myself agreeing with the law that it's good and wanting to do it and not doing it. What's up with that? What I want to do, I don't do. What I don't want to do, that's the very thing I end up doing. How is this happening? It's not that the law is bad. And that's almost the sense in which these verses kind of remind me of that. Oh, blessed is the man that can do that. Man, I wish I could do that because I don't find myself in that place. Oh, that my ways were established. Oh, that my ways were set, prepared, built up, that I could find myself in that blessed state. Paul ends chapter 7 of the book of Romans by saying, who will deliver me from this body of sin and death that causes all these problems? And he answered it by saying, thanks be unto God. He's my deliverer. And for the psalmist here, if we go on to the next stanza, we find something very interesting, at least to me. How can a young man cleanse his way? Okay, how can I do this? I haven't done it, so now I must cleanse my way to get to that place of knowing blessing. How can a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed according to your word. With my whole heart I've sought you. Let me not wander from your commandments. Your word I have hidden in my heart, that I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Lord. Teach me your statutes. With my lips I have declared all the judgments of your mouth. I have rejoiced in the way of your testimonies as much as in all riches. I will meditate on your precepts and contemplate your ways. I will delight myself in your statutes. I will never forget your word. How shall a young man or woman or old man or old woman or middle-aged man or middle-aged woman cleanse their way? By taking heed according to your word. That word take heed means to guard. It literally comes from a Hebrew word which means to build a hedge around it. To build a hedge around it. And that was the way they would guard things from people seeing them or from animals being able to run in and jump in. Guard. Build a hedge around it. Build a hedge around it. To preserve. To take heed. To guard. According to your word. To guard according to your word. That's why the word of God is so important for us to know and not just to think we know. Or just to say, well, I read that a couple years ago.